All right, everybody. It is 9:30 p.m. on Thursday night. The NFL draft just got over. Ryan, we're just going to get straight into this. We're going to give our reaction to the first 32 picks of this draft. Let's just start with Joe Burrow at number 1 to the Bengals. We kind of knew this was happening. I made a video on it. I'll link that in the description. Everybody knows my thoughts on it. But what do you think about Burrow to the Bengals at 1?
Well, I thought it was predictable. I thought it was very clearly predictable, as with Chase Young to Washington at number 2.
Yeah,
Those
I mean,
two
the first three picks
were
really
gonna
we
happen.
knew. Yeah.
The first two we knew for sure. Detroit, they could have traded down, but we saw early in this draft there were not going to be a lot of trades, and I think that has a lot to do with the remote nature of this draft, that there weren't going to be a lot of trades. I really thought Detroit was going to trade down from 3. They didn't do that, but Okudah was clearly the pick there. And then once Detroit picked it started flowing. Once they got to 4, I actually really liked number 4 in New York, the Andrew Thomas pick. Andrew Thomas was my guy. He was the number 1 offensive lineman on my board. So I really liked when New York picked Andrew Thomas. That had a little bit of controversy to it. But for me, I thought the top 4 were exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And really the first kind of shakeup from what we really thought was going to happen was at 4 with Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, going to the Giants. We kind of figured they were going to go O-line there, but maybe Andrew Thomas wasn't the guy we quite expected. And then with number 5 for Miami, I think is where things kind of got interesting, because leading up to the draft, there were all the injury concerns with Tua. Some people were saying he was rising. Some people were saying he was sliding a lot, and teams were nervous to take him. But exactly what we thought would happen for a while happened. The Dolphins take him there. I think Brian Flores and Tua have the potential to build something really good in Miami, so I really like that pick for the Dolphins, going and getting that quarterback that they can build upon for years and years to come. Obviously, the big thing with him is, can he stay healthy? Then another quarterback taken back-to-back after him, Justin Herbert to the Chargers. I still don't know how I feel about this pick, Ryan, so I'll let you start off, and I'll kind of feed off of you with this one. But what are your thoughts on Herbert to the Chargers?
Well, I want to touch on both of these quarterbacks, and I thought this was exactly what was going to happen. I thought Tua was going to go to Miami. I didn't buy the injury concerns. They've been tanking for Tua all year. Tua to Miami made perfect sense. It didn't surprise me at all. I thought this is where Miami was going the entire time. For Los Angeles, I think 6 is about the right spot for Justin Herbert. For me, Justin Herbert is Josh Allen. Pretty much, they're very similar players. He's just as raw. They have the same type of arm talent. I think they make the same type of decisions. So, if Josh Allen is a guy that you're going to take with the 6th overall pick, then I think that's exactly what you're going to get here in Justin Herbert. It's just a matter of, are you happy with that caliber of player this high up in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing with Herbert. I mean, obviously, Ryan, we both go to the University of Oregon. We want to see this guy succeed. He is not the perfect quarterback, though, by any means. He has a lot of flaws as a quarterback, especially at the NFL level. I really would have liked to see him fall to a team like a Indianapolis or a New England, just so he could get maybe in more of a developed system where he can sit for a couple of years, learn, and just have a little bit more time to develop. I worry that he's going to get thrown into the fire too quick in Los Angeles. Granted, they do have weapons, so he has a fighting chance, but I just don't know if the system is developed enough for him to succeed right away, because a lot of this guy's success at the University of Oregon was based on their offensive system, which again was by no means perfect, but it did bring them a lot of success, and Herbert kind of had it really easy there, throwing a lot of screen passes, a lot of checkdowns, didn't have to take too many risks. And I mean, this Chargers team has three huge weapons in the vertical passing game if you count Hunter Henry, and they're going to want to throw the ball deep. So Herbert's arm strength is going to be on full display. We'll see. I think this is a big boom or bust pick with the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that's whatever top-end quarterback is really boom or bust. And Justin Herbert fits that role as well. We saw it with Josh Rosen a few years back. He was a bust, but you can also take someone like Lamar Jackson, and that's a boom. It's really risk-reward here, and Justin Herbert is that. It's a risk, but there also is going to be some reward. But let's move on to 7 with the Carolina Panthers.
This is one of my favorite picks of the draft right here, man. One of my favorite picks.
I actually disagree. I thought that Isaiah Simmons should have been the pick here. I don't hate Derrick Brown. I think that it works fine, but I think Isaiah Simmons is just an overall better player. So I would have taken Isaiah Simmons. He would have fit in for the absence of Luke Kuechly, but I don't hate the Derrick Brown pick. I think he was the second best fit on the board, the second best player overall on the board as well. I don't hate the pick, but I would have gone with Simmons.
Well, Ryan, you mentioned Isaiah Simmons, who was taken at 8 by the Cardinals. That is actually probably my second favorite pick of this first round. So don't get me wrong, I love Isaiah Simmons, and the Cardinals got a huge steal with him at number 8. He probably should have gone at number 4 or 5, maybe even 3. But Derrick Brown to the Panthers, I think he's a guy that's just been criminally underrated in this draft. He is huge. He has a high motor. He is quick. I think he's going to be one of the best defensive linemen in this league for years to come, and the Panthers got a really, really big steal there. But like you said, Isaiah Simmons to the Cardinals, linebacker out of Clemson. I think that is a huge steal as well. The Cardinals are kind of getting that offense shaped up a little bit under Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Now it's time to shift to the defensive side of the ball. And I think Isaiah Simmons is a great start there. They could have gone offensive line, but when there's a player like Isaiah Simmons on the board who is just by far the best player available, it's really hard to pass that up when you have so many holes on the defensive side of the ball.
I had 4 picks in this draft that I absolutely loved, and the first one was Isaiah Simmons to the Cardinals at number 8. He can play anywhere. He's a Derwin James type of player, sort of this new type of NFL roaming. He's going to be a box safety or he's going to be an outside linebacker, and he can fit into all of those different roles. He's a hybrid. I think there's going to be a new defensive position that develops over the next couple of years, and it's going to be his type of hybrid defensive player, and Isaiah Simmons fits that perfectly. Does he fit that well in the Cardinals' defensive system? That's yet to be seen. They just really addressed their linebacker. They got Jordan Hicks last year. They just picked up Devon Kennard over the offseason. So they're really filling out that linebacker role. So whether Isaiah Simmons plays linebacker and has to split some time with those guys, or he moves to free safety, where he also has to split some time in that defensive secondary with Budda Baker, they drafted Deontay Thompson last season, that's yet to be seen. But it's an embarrassment of riches now in Arizona, which is not something that I thought I'd be saying 2 years ago. And I absolutely love this Isaiah Simmons pick, and I think he's the perfect modern NFL defensive player.
Okay, so since you just named a pick you loved, I'll go to another pick that I love, jumping just a little bit here to number 11. Mekhi Becton from Louisville, the offensive tackle, going to the New York Jets. I think Mekhi Becton might have been the best offensive tackle in this draft. First of all, he's huge. Second of all, he's quick. And third, I don't know if you've seen this guy's highlight tape, but he just mows dudes over all day long. He's got a super high motor, and I think Mekhi Becton is going to have a lot of success in New York as they try to protect Sam Darnold in that offense that's really just kind of finding its legs here in the early stages. And I think they kind of nailed that pick, getting the big offensive tackle. I don't really see another way they could have gone there.
Well, I agree. I think that Mekhi Becton was really the choice. They could have gone wide receiver there, but for me, Mekhi Becton was the 4th offensive lineman of the top 4. It was a clear top 4 in Thomas, Wills, Becton, and Wirfs. And I thought Becton was the worst of that 4. So I thought the Jets could have gone with someone else. I think Becton is the most risky. He failed that drug test. He is athletic, but there is a risk with all of these picks. There's a big risk, and I think that there's a larger risk with Becton than there is with the other 3 offensive linemen. So for me, I don't hate the Becton pick. I understand it. I like it. I don't love it. Personally, for me, with the players left on the board, I would have gone with either a wide receiver or I would have gone with Tristan Wirfs.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I can see the wide receiver option, and that brings us to the number 12 pick. Maybe, one of the biggest surprises of the first round was Henry Ruggs out of Alabama being the first wide receiver on the board. I just dropped my wide receiver rankings from this draft this morning. I actually had Ruggs as my second best wide receiver. I'm really high on him, but I didn't really think the vibe around the league was the same way, but apparently John Gruden and Mike Mayock, they loved this guy too, and they made him the first wide receiver taken. Like I said, I love it. I think Ruggs is going to be a really dynamic Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, Hollywood Brown type player in this league for a long time. The guy is pretty much always going to be the fastest player on the field, and in today's NFL, where points and offense is everything, I think he's just really the perfect player.
Well, I thought it was incredibly predictable. I thought it was pretty straightforward with what Vegas was going to go here at number 12, as well as 19. I pegged both Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett. They just felt like Oakland guys. We know Oakland liked the speed. Speed kills with Oakland, and Henry Ruggs, I felt like was the obvious choice for the Raiders. For any other team, yeah, you would have picked Judy or you would have picked CeeDee Lamb. But with Mike Mayock, with Al Davis, with the Oakland Raiders, you always knew it was going to be Henry Ruggs. And then just skipping ahead a tiny bit with Damon Arnett at 19, I think that pick was straight typical forward as well with what this Raiders team likes to do. They like those blue blood programs, those tough physical guys, and Arnett just felt like the cornerback that they were going to pick there.
All right, so let's stick with the wide receivers while we're at it. Denver Broncos at number 15, they take Jerry Jeudy, who was also widely considered to be one of, if not the top wide receiver in this draft. I mean, the Broncos seemed like they wanted him all along. They were even considering trading up for him, but he did just fall right into their laps. What do you think about this pick for them?
Loved it. This is another one of my loves. Jerry Jeudy, perfect fit. They lost Emmanuel Sanders to the 49ers last season. Now Sanders on the Saints. But the Broncos, they don't have that type of receiving core. And Jerry Jeudy is a guy coming into this draft that was a legitimate number one, and I think that he fits into this offense perfectly. Drew Lock, a young quarterback, needs that number one receiver. He gets it in Jerry Jeudy, and I think that it is an ideal fit, an ideal selection for Denver and John Elway here. And Scott, unless you have something to say about Jerry Jeudy, I want to jump back to the 13th and 14th pick trade. But do you have something to say about it?
I was talking about receivers, man. I was going to keep going with the receivers.
Well, I want to sort of go in a little bit of a chronological order, and the first trade of the day was between the Buccaneers and the 49ers, the swap of the 13th, 14th. I thought this was genius from both sides. I thought this was the
this one
perfect
pissed
trade.
me off.
I thought this was the perfect trade from both sides. From Tampa Bay's perspective, actually, let's start from San Francisco because it helps you understand Tampa Bay. San Francisco, around the first or second pick of the draft, reports came out, Joe Staley, 49ers are on the fence about him. They might pick an offensive lineman at 13. That was all smoke and mirrors to try to trade bait someone at 13, and they did an absolutely perfect job of it. The 49ers wanted JAVON KINLAW all along, and they baited Tampa Bay into trading up and picking Tristan Wirfs. With that being said, it was a smart bait to take for the Buccaneers because they are investing in Tom Brady. They're investing in this new offense, and to pick an offensive lineman to help protect Tom Brady in what was a lackluster offensive line last season is the perfect move for the Buccaneers. I thought it was fantastic, both from the 49ers and the Buccaneers, the ideal trade. Both teams were playing each other, and both teams filled what they wanted perfectly. I loved it.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you could deny the fact that the San Francisco 49ers might have just had the best draft. I think overall in the first round, they filled their two biggest needs. They got another, I mean, not that they really needed a defensive lineman, but that is kind of their bread and butter to get after the quarterback. So JAVON KINLAW is going to fit in perfectly there. And they also got Brandon AIYUK, who in my opinion is a steal at number 25. So the 49ers just had a really, really good draft overall. And like you said, from the Buccaneers' perspective, it just also makes a lot of sense. Go get Tristan Wirfs, who is probably the most play-now-ready offensive lineman in that range. So good move by both sides.
Yeah, touching on the Brandon AIYUK move just a little bit, I didn't love trading back up in the first round. I'm a 49ers fan. I like Brandon AIYUK, and I think he'll fit in. But with the wide receiver class so deep, I thought they could have waited, maybe traded up a little bit further back, to the start of the second round or the back end of the first round, because I think that the back end of this top tier of the receiving class is all pretty interchangeable. I like AIYUK. We ranked him pretty high in our rankings that we released this morning, but I do think that it's going to be it was a risky pick, and I think they're mostly interchangeable. But if John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan saw something that I didn't, then I'm all for it. And Scott, we got right back on your wide receiver train, so we can go and run with that as well.
Well, I just think it's really the storyline of the draft, right? So the next wide receiver taken was CeeDee Lamb by the Dallas Cowboys. I am the quintessential Dallas Cowboys hater, but I do love CeeDee Lamb, and just taking all my bias and just my bias goggles off for a little bit, this just makes a lot of sense for Dallas. They now have Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper as their wide receiving core. Definitely the best in the NFC East as they're trying to put a team around Dak and Ezekiel Elliott. And as long as they can make everything click and they can be a functional team, CeeDee Lamb should have a lot of success, and he doesn't have that pressure to be the number one guy from day one. So I like this pick for the Dallas Cowboys, even though I wish he would have fallen to the Eagles.
For me, in this draft, I thought there was a clear top 16 players. I wouldn't have put A.J. Terrell in that top 16. I would have put CeeDee Lamb. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys just went with the best available, and that was very clearly CeeDee Lamb at the time. I'm not quite sure how he'll fit, but he has the possibility of being a dynamic number one wide receiver. And you pair that up with a guy like Amari Cooper, who they just paid, and a Michael Gallup, who's still on his rookie deal, that could be a dangerous threesome in the wide receiving core of Dallas. And it's very, very rare to see so many talented pieces in one wide receiving core at the same time. And if Gallup continues to develop, and if CeeDee Lamb develops into what we think he will be, that is going to be an absolutely treacherous passing game in Dallas, Texas, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare for opposing secondaries to stop.
I mean, I think time will be able to tell on that. Just because you have three capable wide receivers doesn't really mean the offense is going to mesh, but I mean, it makes sense on paper. Should be a good move. I have no doubt that CeeDee Lamb will have a really solid career in Dallas. But that brings us to number 18. The Miami Dolphins select Austin Jackson from USC, offensive tackle, and they got this pick from the Steelers for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Isn't that correct? Or earlier in the season?
They did. It was for Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yep, so they took Austin Jackson with that. I mean, again, this is just another pick that makes sense. You take Tua at number 5. Their offensive line is bad. You've got to protect him. You've got to start somewhere. Take the best offensive tackle available. That was Austin Jackson at number 18.
Yeah, just absolutely was. You have to protect Tua. That's your investment. You just traded away Laramie Tunsil to start last season. You need to replace the offensive line production. Is Austin Jackson the best offensive lineman? No, not necessarily.
It was a little bit of a reach, but they needed it.
Yeah, you need to take that risk with Austin Jackson. If you have the capability to draft an offensive lineman, I would do it 10 times out of 10. Offensive line as a full unit, I think, is one of the most important positions outside of quarterback in the entire game. So if you can shore up that offensive line, it is a great move.
Yeah, and that will bring us to number 19. We already touched on this pick a little bit, but this is so weird to say. The Las Vegas Raiders take Damon Arnett, the corner out of Ohio State. He played opposite of Jeff Okudah, and Ohio State was simply one of the, actually, I'm going to say the best defense in the nation last year. And I like Damon Arnett. I think he's a good corner. I watched him play in the semifinal. I mean, he can lock guys down. I do think this was a little bit of a reach by the Raiders, but at that same token, we know that John Gruden and Mike Mayock kind of have a little bit of a different draft process than everybody else in the way they recruit guys. They're really going for guys playing in their system. So, I mean, time will be able to tell with this pick. The Raiders had a good draft last year, and I have no doubt they know what they're doing there.
Yeah, I completely agree. It just felt like a Raiders pick, and I was at the semifinal game. Arnett, clearly the second best corner on the field, but
how did I not know that you were at that game?
I don't know. I was there. I live in Arizona, so Over winter break, I went to the semifinal. It was a great experience. I
I'm
was
sure.
rooting for Ohio State a little bit,
I was
disappointed when Clemson won, but that secondary for Ohio State is deadly. And that brings us to number 20.
This was one of my favorite picks right here.
I
one
disagree.
of my favorite picks.
I
Why?
hated what Jacksonville did in this draft. I absolutely hated it. Starting with number 9 and C.J. Henderson, I thought that was a reach. I thought C.J. Henderson was one
I
of
agree there.
I thought C.J. Henderson was way overhyped. He rose coming in.
He's too small.
Jacksonville took the bait, and all of the smoke and mirrors that all the teams were laying out, Jacksonville ate it up, hook, line, and sinker, took C.J. Henderson. I don't think that was the right pick. That was my least favorite pick of the first round, and CHAISSON is up there as well. You need defensive interior if you're Jacksonville. Also, for the players' sake, I don't like it at all. Getting stuck in Jacksonville is the absolute worst. They're the worst organization in all of football. Come at me, Duval.
Second
don't
worst.
care.
Second worst.
No, I'm hyping up the Cowboys. Do not go to Jacksonville. Your career will be ruined. We've seen what's happened with Yannick Ngakoue. I don't like CHAISSON here. I don't think he fits the brand of Jacksonville. I think he's too small. I think that CHAISSON in a system with a good coach could be able to build up his technique. Right now, he will get eaten alive in Jacksonville, and it's not his fault at all. He's a great prospect. Jacksonville is the worst organization for someone like that. It's not a bad pick from Jacksonville's perspective. I just hate to see it from CHAISSON's perspective because Jacksonville is where careers go to die.
Okay, well, just because, I completely agree with you. I think the same thing about Dallas, but I was able to admit that the CeeDee Lamb pick was a good pick, and I think you got to be a little bit more objective here. I understand that Jacksonville is a horrible franchise, and they have killed the careers of especially multiple defensive linemen and defensive players in general, but you got to understand that I think CHAISSON was a steal here. He kind of fits into that same category that you were talking about with Isaiah Simmons as a guy that is going to maybe start a new trend of a new kind of hybrid rover position. And I think CHAISSON absolutely fits into that role. He is hyper athletic. He can guard anyone. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. He can play in the zone. CHAISSON is a super, super versatile guy. Now, I completely agree with you about Jacksonville as a franchise, but I think they took the best player on the board at number 20.
Well, I don't think they needed it. They have Josh Allen. They drafted their pass rusher last year, and sure, you might want someone to go on the opposite side of that, but there's way bigger holes in this Jacksonville defense.
I think
secondary.
You can pick. And Jacksonville, I just have to say, I think you could draft any position and warrant it as a whole. Honestly.
I think that I agree for the most part, but if you're not going to trade Yannick Ngakoue, which for some reason they continue to put off and not do, then CHAISSON is coming in to be a third or fourth string behind Allen, Ngakoue, and even Cassius Marsh could be considered one of those guys.
CHAISSON's going to see the field, but let's move on. Let's move on this pick. Obviously, we disagree. This is my team here, at number 21, the Philadelphia Eagles. I am still kind of digesting this pick a little bit, much like the Herbert pick. My thoughts aren't completely formulated on it. Jalen Reagor out of TCU. Like I said earlier in the video, we just dropped our top 8 wide receivers in this draft, and Jalen Reagor was actually not even on the list for me. If I would have extended the list, he would have been number 9, but to me, he was just not in that same conversation with those other 8 guys. I was a little disappointed at first with this pick, but that said, he is a burner guy, and I just kind of justified the Ruggs pick at 12 with that same kind of sentiment that burners are the future of wide receiver. I just don't want another wide receiver who comes in and can't track balls and can't catch passes. And those were my 2 biggest knocks on Reagor when I was watching the film. He had a 47% catch rate last season, which was bottom 3 in the FBS. Jalen Reagor is just not that consistent, sure-handed guy that the Eagles need, and I just feel like this pick is going to be Nelson Agholor all over again. But that said, I'm trying not to be a typical Eagles fan here and just knock the pick from the beginning. I want to give Reagor a chance. I'm going to support him, and I'm all in on him. I just don't know that it was the best option here with Justin Jefferson on the board and with Higgins on the board, and I was really big on Higgins.
Well, I agree with you. I think that for Reagor's sake, he did get a big boost this week coming into the draft. He was one of those risers. I'd say that him and CJ Henderson were the top two that just continued to rise as the draft got closer and closer. But I agree. I think for Philadelphia, what they need at wide receiver is a Justin Jefferson type of player. I would have been okay with AIYUK. I would have been okay with Higgins there. Yep. Reagor just feels like a guy that's way too risky that doesn't really fit the scheme. I think exactly. They need some prototypical X wide receivers, and I just don't think that Jalen Reagor's it. I think that he's too much of a burner, and while it's always great to have a guy that can take the top off of a defense, we saw what Deshaun Jackson did when he was with the Eagles almost a decade ago. We saw what that brought to the table.
Deshaun Jackson's still with the Eagles.
Well, yeah, but he left and then came back. Yeah. I'm saying young Deshaun Jackson.
I do want to touch on that, though, since you just mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm saying young Deshaun Jackson, but I do
No, I get what you're saying.
I think that it's just too much of a risk. It's too much of a risk, and for Philadelphia, their problem was drops, and the guy to be consistent with stuff like that is going to be a Justin Jefferson or a T. Higgins, and they just did not go that direction.
Yeah, and one of my other knocks on this pick, and like I said, I'm going to try to be supportive of Jalen Reagor. I don't think he's a bad receiver at all, and I'm sure he can find some success in some way in Philadelphia. And I know it was a small sample size with Greg Ward Jr. last year, but I think he's got to have another chance at being that slot burner type of guy. Not only do we have Greg Ward Jr. coming back, but we also have Deshaun Jackson coming back, who may be getting older, but he showed last season when he was healthy that he still has the ability to beat guys down the field and be that deep play, Mr. Deshaun Jackson, Mr. Touchdown type of guy. Like, he's not obviously going to be vintage D-Jax, but he's still capable of that, so I just don't like the fit here for the Eagles. I'll get off of my Eagles hype train, though.
Well, I want to touch on that point just a tiny bit, but you're right. They have four guys who are playing essentially the same position. Now, with Reagor, Agholor, Greg Ward, and Deshaun
Aguilar's
Jackson.
going to be gone. And I'm spacing if Agholor already is gone.
But just to that point, they clearly have a type of receiver they like, but having four of the same guy is just not conducive to team success. So I completely agree with you. I would have gone with a different receiver here.
Yeah, so that brings us to 22. The receiver train continues for the Minnesota Vikings. They take the guy I probably think the Eagles should have taken, Justin Jefferson, out of LSU. I mentioned this in my receiver rankings video this morning, that Justin Jefferson may not have the upside that a lot of these other receivers do, like a CeeDee Lamb or even an AIYUK or Henry Ruggs. But I think he is one of the safest receiver picks in this draft. He's a solid route runner, very sure-handed. He's got athleticism. I mean, he doesn't have anything that really jumps out at you, but he's just really solid in every category, and he showed under Ed Orgeron last season that, and Joe Brady, you can't leave out Joe Brady when you're going to talk about that LSU offense. He showed that he's just a guy who you can plug into your system, and he will run it right for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Justin Jefferson, he's a safe pick. He's, quite honestly, if you're going to replace a receiver like Stephon Diggs, you don't want to take a risk. Minnesota's missed on receivers in the past. They missed on Laquan Treadwell. They've missed on a few others. You don't want to take that miss. Justin Jefferson is a guy that will probably be the number 2 next year and can continue to develop and possibly be the number 1 and usurp Adam Thielen at some point during his career. And they could be a 1-2 punch just like Stephon Diggs and Thielen were last year. Give Kirk Cousins a little help. I think it's the right pick and the best pick that Minnesota could have made.
Okay, so besides New England trading their pick, it got a little bit boring besides the AIYUK pick at 25 to San Francisco. But 26 with Green Bay, trading the Texans for that 26 pick, they select Jordan Love. This is going to be a controversial pick, and I can't wait to see what Packer Nation has to say about this. I haven't really checked their Twitter yet or any of their prominent sports talk figures, but I'm sure they'll have something to say about this. This is obviously the guy who now they want to replace Aaron Rodgers at some point. That may not be now, but they obviously have that vision in their mind if they're willing to take the risk to trade up past 3 teams who don't, actually 4 teams. Actually, none of these teams left in the first round needed a quarterback. So they took a jump for seemingly no reason and selected a quarterback. So what do you think about this, Ryan?
I'm of the mindset that drafting a quarterback as a risk is always the right move. But I think that this would be the one exception, is when you have Aaron Rodgers on your roster. I get he's 36, but coming out of the contentious relationship he just had with Mike McCarthy to now put him on thin ice a little bit with Matt LaFleur and that new regime there in Green Bay, I think this was the wrong time to make the move to get the predecessor to Aaron Rodgers, because Jordan Love, he's a risky player. And I really like drafting a guy that could potentially be a great NFL quarterback. But right here, I think it's stay pat with what you have. Aaron Rodgers just led you to an NFC championship last season. You don't want to be messing up that relationship, especially after Rodgers just got out of what was really a just terrible marriage with him and McCarthy. You don't want to put your relationship through that type of ringer this early. And yes, I like Jordan Love. I think that he's great, and I think that for any other team, I think that it would have been a great pick in the back end of the first round. But for Green Bay, because of Aaron Rodgers and because of the newness of Matt LaFleur, I don't think that this is going to go great for that Packers relationship, and I think that it could isolate Aaron Rodgers and make him feel some type of way.
So I've got a couple things to say about this pick. I'm going to start with this. Aaron Rodgers, when he was initially drafted out of Cal, was in this exact same position with Brett Favre. Brett Favre was still a very capable quarterback winning games, but he was kind of nearing the end of his career. Rodgers is selected as a later first-round pick who kind of slipped a little bit, and it's just really that similar situation. So I think Rodgers would kind of be unjustified in feeling mad about this because he was in this exact same place, and he knows what it feels like to have that contention there. So I would really hope that Rodgers reflects back on that time, remembers this, and kind of, just makes himself make the best of the situation. Help mentor the young guy. Realize that your career can't last forever. But second part, I'm going to drop Jordan Love as a prospect. I'm not even going to consider how good he is. We know his ups, we know his downs, we know kind of what his profile is. But I don't like Green Bay trading up in this situation to go get the quarterback. You look at the teams behind them in the first round. You've got Seattle, does not need a quarterback. Baltimore does not need a quarterback. Tennessee just re-signed their quarterback. Miami just took a quarterback. Minnesota has a huge a quarterback under a huge contract.
Well, Green Bay didn't even trade up above them. Green Bay was at 30, so they only traded up above the 4 teams you just said.
Oh, you're right. I was for some reason thinking that Green Bay was not in the first round. That's my bad. But regardless, you get the point. They just jumped a bunch of teams that did not need a quarterback. So I don't get the logic for going up and trading to get him. That being said, I don't think it's a bad idea to go get a young quarterback and let Aaron Rodgers mentor him.
I agree. I agree to all of those points. I think that it's all going to be Aaron Rodgers' mindset. If he welcomes in Jordan Love, great. If Matt LaFleur said to Aaron Rodgers before this pick, we're going to take Jordan Love, but Aaron Rodgers, you're the guy for as long as you want to be. And no matter how good Jordan Love is, you're going to be our starting quarterback because you've earned it, then I think that is fine, at least to nourish that relationship. But I wouldn't like it if Aaron Rodgers was left in the dark for this pick, and it was, we're taking Jordan Love just to take Jordan Love and potentially replace you.
I don't want to attack Aaron Rodgers' character too much here, but to me, he just doesn't seem like that kind of guy that is going to be okay with it. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, he went on the Pat McAfee show very early in the draft. I was flipping back and forth between the Fox live stream and the Pat McAfee show live stream, and he said that he would welcome in with open arms whoever Green Bay drafted, and he would text them right away to welcome them to the family. I'm going to be interested to see if that actually happened.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a different situation.
Yeah, it's definitely Aaron Rodgers is a sensitive guy, and it's a touchy subject whenever you're going to put a little bit of controversy with someone who is that touchy, especially about his job that he just came out of a really tough relationship with.
All right, so to close out the first round, it got a little bit boring again. Not a lot of, like crazy picks that we can go too in depth on. But one that I really did like was Patrick Queen at 28, the linebacker out of LSU going to the Ravens. I think that's a really good fit. Baltimore's adding to an already prolific defense there. I'm sure you agree, Ryan. We were both pretty high on Patrick Queen.
Absolutely. I think that Patrick Queen is the perfect fit in Baltimore. He screams Baltimore Raven to me. I think it works perfectly. Put him next to Patrick Owusu. It's going to be a linebacking duo that's going to fit great. And I just want to touch on one more first-round pick, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The last pick of the first round, I was shocked that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the first running back off the board. I knew he'd been
You would have thought Dobbins, especially to the Chiefs.
You could have said Dobbins. You could have maybe Cam Akers, not really. You could have said Jonathan Taylor. You could have said DeAndre Swift. All of those guys, especially Swift, Dobbins, and Taylor, were much higher touted than Edwards-Helaire. But according to Jay Glazer, a lot of teams were asking about Edwards-Helaire coming into the draft, and the Chiefs took him at the end of the first round, and I think it was absolutely the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have, if they have a hole, it's at corner and it's at running back. They went and addressed the need. Edwards-Helaire should be a good fit. He's another speedy guy in that backfield, and he can catch passes out of the backfield as well. I like this pick for Kansas City.
I don't like them trying to take the depth chart away from my boy Darwin Thompson. If you've been a fan of this channel, back when it was SG1 Sports NFL, you know Darwin Thompson is my favorite player. So,
What about Boston Scott, man?
Boston Scott's up there, but he ain't no Darwin Thompson. Darwin Thompson is 1, Isabella's 2. I have one more thing that I want to ask you before we close out this reaction. And
sure.
We had a lot of funny NFL draft cams tonight, and I was actually very surprised with how well this whole operation was run, especially I thought there was for sure going to be a ton of hiccups. There weren't.
No, Tech Crew did a great job.
Fantastic. But we still did get some very, very funny draft cams, whether it's for the players or for the front office executives, and I have 4 of them, and I want you to pick your best or your favorite. So the first one is CeeDee Lamb. He took his phone back from his sister, took it from his lap,
was funny.
Got it snatched away. Then the Cowboys, they just had 2 hilarious. They had Jerry Jones in what I'm calling the bougie room, which was just that white couch. It seemed like just an endless void. And then Mike McCarthy, to contrast, with his face just straight up in the camera, like he was about to eat us. And then Bruce Arians just chilling out in the Tampa weather, just soaking it all in. And finally, towards the end of the draft, not a lot of people were still watching at this point. Some people clicked off. It's not the top 10. It's not the top 20. Mike Vrabel, this is my pick. Mike Vrabel with the absolute funniest draft cam of all of them. First off, he's chewing his tobacco. He has his dip cup. He spits his tobacco back in his dip cup. And behind him, he has his 2 kids, one of which is wearing a Tennessee light blue and white morph suit with Tennessee basketball shorts. And then his other kid was wearing his Mike Vrabel Pro Bowl jersey with a full-on mullet. It was the most entertaining the draft had been in forever. I loved it.
Mike is made for Tennessee. Yeah, I think Mike Vrabel is going to have quite the run as the Titans head coach. But my favorite draft cam moment, I'm not even going to narrow it down to one because I think you nailed the most funny one. CeeDee Lamb was hilarious grabbing the phone back from his girlfriend. But my just favorite thing about the draft cams in general was the amount of players that were totally and blatantly disregarding the no gatherings over 10 rule. Like, there were players with, like, people, you could see them hiding in the hallway behind them. And, like, I think Tua had, like, 20, 25 people in his house. Like, I mean, it's all in good fun. Like, they can do what they want for the draft. But it was just funny seeing the blatant disregard for the guidelines that are in place. It just kind of defeated the purpose of having the remote draft.
Oh,
but,
yeah,
hey,
there was one person,
one guy who
I forget who it was. There was one guy, I forgot who it was.
Quick.
Okay,
Ryan,
go for it,
I'm talking here.
Go for it,
I'm talking here. It's okay. One guy who I gotta give credit, though, is Joe Burrow. He knew that all eyes would be on him. He literally kept it to just him, his mom, and his dad. Like, that's a stand-up guy right there.
Yeah, there was one guy who, I forget who it was. It was somewhere near the 20s. It might have been Rager or AIYUK or CHAISSON, someone like that. They had so many people, and when they got on camera, you could see the mom trying to shoo them all off screen, and then one of them chucked their phone into the camera just to be like, I'm here, I'm making sure that my phone's getting on camera if I can't. It was hilarious. I loved it. I loved everything about this draft.
You know, and we made the best of it. I hope the NFL comes back in a timely manner and everything can resume to normal, but overall, this draft was a fun time. I'm really excited to watch the next rounds. We'll be back, I'm sure, with more reactions. But thanks for tuning in. This video went a little long. Hopefully somebody's still with us here. But we had fun breaking this draft down. It's going to be an interesting time leading up to the NFL season. But what a great way to kick it off tonight, making the best of the situation. Make sure to subscribe to Semi-Pro. We drop daily documentaries, news, analysis, everything sports related. It is really the ultimate channel for the sports nerd. Drop a like on this video and comment if you have any agreements, disagreements, or whatever you want to say. We'll be happy to talk with you. Thanks for tuning in.